So, what do you think we're talking about today? I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this one, especially because when I was planning this episode, I actually was at a very different place in the story of One Piece than I am now. So I'm much more ahead. So I'm going to try really hard not to give any spoilers. I think I'll manage because this is more conceptual than it is like plot based as a video. So I think we're good. Just to give some background. So we are talking about One Piece. And I started watching the anime, I think a little over a year ago now. And it was because, still is because in a way, although it's evolved now, my boyfriend loves this show and the manga as well. And I don't know. I need to check how long he's been following it, but I know that he's been following it for a while. And I was like, okay, well, there's this thing that my person is interested in checking in with every week, which means it's probably worth checking in with myself. So I started watching it for him, but now I'm definitely watching it for me. And it took me a while to get in. But I think I'm like that with a lot of shows. It takes me a while to get hooked and to attach to a character. So, it took me about 200 episodes to get really, really hooked. That being said, I'm never turning back, and I am fully, fully obsessed with this world and these characters. And I wanted to bring it up as the first digestive episode of this podcast because it's been a huge part of this theme, which is the first season, right, called Metamorphosis. And it has played such a big part in pushing me to really, really fully go into all my projects and fully explore what I want to do, and do it with a sense of just curiosity, fun, and excitement that I think I had lost somewhere along the way. So, that all being said, I hope that I can give you a taste today of, I'm going to say like 5 to 6 reasons or lessons that I've learned from One Piece that, one, have just changed my world or my perception of the world and of myself. And second, that I hope will encourage you to give it a try yourself. Whether it's the manga or the anime or even the live action, which I've heard is actually really well cast. So if that's better for you, then go for it. Just get into this world. It's amazing. Okay, let me get into it. Okay, so lesson number 1 / reason number 1. That's the concept of nakama. Now, I had never heard this word before, but in the anime, because that's the one that I'm watching, it's the word that they use to describe the bond of the pirate crews. I think all of the crews, but specifically we're talking about obviously the Straw Hat Pirates. So I'm someone who has actively searched for this feeling of belonging and for a soul tribe in my life. And watching this show completely changed my perception of what that should look like and feel like. So the Straw Hats are a group of completely could not be more different people. They all have different senses of humor, different senses of, what the world, like the lenses through which they see the world, different work ethics, different tempers. For more concrete terms, they also all have really, really powerful strengths and really, really comedic sometimes, but potentially devastating weaknesses if they were in the wrong group. Why I say that? So Luffy has his own things. He's super gullible. Zoro has this complete lack of sense of direction. Nami has this huge temper. I could go on and on with all the characters, but I also don't want to spoil of who joins the crew. Anyway, so all these characters have their strengths and their weaknesses, but they wholeheartedly accept each other. Not unconditionally, I will say that, but wholeheartedly accept and love each other and support each other. And they do this on the basis of two fundamental things that, as I said, changed my perception of what it means to find really, really close friends, like your inner circle, you know? And the first thing is this thing that actually Sanji says at one point, and this is not a spoiler, I won't tell the context, but he says at one point to this other character who's having self-doubt in a moment. He says, I will do what you can't do, and you go do what I can't do. Something along those lines. And I think this is indicative of their whole group dynamic. That is to say that they will call each other out on the things that are problematic, are getting in the way of their mission. But as far as who they are as people, they know that one another is not perfect. But they're there for each other, and they understand where their strengths overlap and where they are distinct. And as such, they get farther together. They don't expect perfection from each other or to fully complete each other's worlds, if that makes sense. They understand who is best for what task. And anyway, that leads me to my second point. So the second part of this nakama question is the fact that they all have these dreams, right? That's why they all get on the boat at one point. And the premise of the nakama bond, as I understand it now, is that their dreams are completely compatible. That is to say, if one of them wins, the other one, by extension, naturally wins. So I'll use Sanji again. So Sanji's the chef. If he becomes a better chef along his journey, he is immediately benefiting everybody in the group. So their dreams and them growing together happens as a natural consequence of going along this journey. There's no sense of competition or trying to override each other, except for, of course, there's those little bumps between certain crew members, but they all basically understand this thing that their dreams help each other in a way, and because of that, they also make it so that they each guard each other's dreams. So it's not so much, this is my dream and I'm going after this, and we're just companions. It's, I will guard your dream as if it's my own, because we all win this together or we don't. And I think that's one of the greatest lessons from One Piece so far. Lesson number 2 / reason why you should watch One Piece number 2 revolves around a single character, and that is Monkey D. Luffy. And he taught me a lesson which I didn't even know I needed, which is, it's not about what you're doing, it's about the way that you're doing it. Are you doing it with full commitment, or are you somewhat passive? Are you enthusiastic, or are you seeing the things that you want to do or have to do as a chore or another thing on your to-do list? I was at such a low point with my procrastination and self-doubt before I took certain moment-to-moment mindset shifts. But those mindset shifts were entirely, I genuinely think, like 80% due to watching this character and bringing in his mindset a little bit into my own. It's not that I ever lacked enthusiasm or commitment to the things that I wanted to do. It was that I lacked a sense of self-trust that would essentially allow me to move forward on more steady feet. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, Luffy doesn't have this problem. He has absolutely no proof that he is going to become or is able to become the Pirate King. None. Not really. I mean, he has some training in his childhood, but that's pretty much it. And especially considering his personality that his crewmates find completely frustrating sometimes because he just does what he wants to do at any given moment, and follows his excitement over any kind of plan. All those things actually are the thing that make him frustrating, perhaps to work with, but are the thing that also mean that he will succeed. Because he has such a sense of like, this is who I am. I trust myself, my own ability. I trust my journey. I trust fun, basically. And so this mindset is not just something that makes life easier because it lives in your brain. I genuinely think that the world and the universe rise up to meet an attitude like that. And this is what creates this kind of aura around Luffy that, people are always saying like, he's so lucky. Like he gets lucky every time. He escapes death. He defeats these crazy opponents. But it's not luck. It's the fact that he genuinely believes so much in himself and his nakama, by the way. And he follows what makes him happy and what challenges him, which contributes to my third point, but I'll get there in a second. But the pro tip here is that it's not luck. If he was half-assed about everything that he did, excuse the language, but if he was that, or if he was defeatist or he stopped at every obstacle that he had, one, he wouldn't be that likable of a character, but two, he would get nowhere near as far. It's really overcoming this question of self-doubt, which I don't think enters Luffy's mind, except for maybe once or twice. But even then, he's also chosen the people in his life so well that they always remind him to get back up. All right. Lesson number 3 / reason number 3 to watch One Piece. And this actually revolves around 2 characters, Luffy and I think you'd call it his right-hand man, his first crew member, Zoro. So this is probably one of my favorite points and has been helping me the most on my journey, which is both Zoro and Luffy seem to have this sort of like inbuilt growth mindset, where basically they embrace challenges and new and stronger opponents at every single chance they can get. And the important thing is that very mindset is the exact thing that's going to get them to where they want to get, assuming they do get there at some point. I hope they do. I think they will. So Luffy wants to be the Pirate King. Zoro wants to be the best swordsman in the world. So as I said before, Luffy starts off with really not that much proof that he is any good at anything, much less being a captain. Zoro is not entirely the same. He's a genuinely really, really good swordsman to start off with, but again, nowhere near the best swordsman in the world. But they both understand this really, really important thing, which is that they see challenge as the opportunities, and they actually embrace challenges, as opportunities to not just increase their skill, but literally get them closer to that thing that they want, most of all. And what this mindset basically creates is this attitude that defeats are not defeats, right? They're just setbacks and opportunities to get stronger. And wins are feedback of momentum, in a sense, like to keep going, and that things are working. In other words, follow the challenges. But let me put a little disclaimer here, a word of caution, if you will, which is follow the challenges, but not the struggles. And there is a very important distinction there, especially mental struggles. That's a really important note to make, because I can tell you Luffy and Zoro run away from struggle. The way to tell the difference is that a challenge expands you. It moves you closer to the person who has that thing that you're striving for. And it makes you maybe stronger, mentally stronger, and again, gives you more of that sense of momentum. A struggle is more the energy of smallness, of feeling limited, maybe stuck or stagnant, unnecessarily so. It keeps you kind of trapped in a loop, whether mental or literal. Lesson number 4 / reason you should watch One Piece number 4 also revolves around a character, and that's Usopp. And this is a really, really fast one because I really just want to say that for me, he represents existential courage. And that's because, as I said earlier in the Nakama point, his greatest weakness of the group is that he's scared at every turn of going on islands, of facing certain opponents, but also at every turn, he rises to the occasion and he does the thing scared. And that has also been a huge life changer for me because you're not going to feel things. You're always going to feel the nervousness and the anxiousness and the fear and whatever. And the point is, you do it afraid. Ugh. It's uncomfortable feeling even to think about it. But it's true. You do it afraid. And actually, maybe, just maybe, like Usopp, your instincts are actually heightened, which is a good thing in those scenarios. Okay. So lesson number 5 / reason number 5, I'm going to have to zoom out for this one, actually, because it's not so much to do with the plot itself, but more to do with the creator. And that would be Eiichiro Oda / Goda. So why I have to zoom out is because, well, part of this whole thing that I want to create is, as I mentioned in my very first episode, this understanding and this behind the scenes look into a creator's process. Not to replicate it, but to just tune into the feeling of flow and creativity, right? And how each individual person does it. So, just like with the friendship thing too, I had such a romantic view of what it meant to be an artist. And an outdated view, let's call it. I won't go too much into that today because there's actually a future episode on this, but I just wanted to take him, actually he's a illustrator, I think initially, of the manga, as an example of this point, which is that I now believe that an artist should embody their art. So Oda, now over 25 years ago, that's crazy. From what I read, actually, in doing research for this episode, he was rejected 3 times in the publishing of One Piece. And on top of it, he had initially done a different storyline, similar characters, but different, not different world, but different plot points, if that makes sense. So he pivoted several times, and he was also rejected several times. And now, 25 plus years later, he has this whole world completely, not just being written out, but he has probably teams on teams of people creating all these different things. It's not just the anime, it's the live action, it's the merchandise, it's the I saw One Piece on Ice videos. That's crazy. It's the recipe books. I actually just recently made some of Sanji's recipes from his recipe book. My point is that it's a story that's gone way beyond him. And I think the only way to really explain that, and for me it's been so important as somebody who wants to create meaningful things in this world, is that he embodies his story and his characters, literally. So I don't know of that many people, artists, creators, who have stuck at a single story, stuck at these very specific characters for over 25 years, and who wasn't super dissuaded by the rejection enough to let go of that story of 25 years. And when I say he embodies his art, I mean, if you think about the dedication and the commitment and the grit of his characters, he is all of that in the writing of his story. So his characters have these dreams. He also has this dream, and he keeps on going. If all of us told our stories the way that he is telling his, I think the world would be a lot richer, and there'd be a lot less time for some of the horrible things that are in it at this moment. Which leads me to the final point. So there are 6 points in this. And this is actually a point that I added pretty recently, because I've only seen the extent of the world building as of the last 100 episodes, I think. And again, no spoilers here, but I have to mention this simply because it matters so deeply to me in the stories that I read and watch, which is the quality of the world building. I have never seen, aside from maybe The Lord of the Rings, such an in-depth, built-out world. And I say that knowing also, whether purposely or not, the extent of the parallels between the One Piece world and our own. And when I tell you that it has helped me to come to terms with and actually face our world 10 times more bravely, more excitedly, even considering some of the darkness of these times, with just a completely new attitude. I mean, genuinely, I think it's going to stay with me forever. And I only hope that more people watch it with that in mind, because the parallels are insane. And the way that the characters respond to the realities of their world, I think if we did the same, we'd flip the world on its head in a good way. If you needed the nudge, if you've been hearing about it, if you're like, I don't know if it's worth it, it is 100%. As I said, it's been changing my life, my views on self-confidence, my views on myself, on the world. It's so worth it. I'm almost offended. I think I said this once. I'm almost offended that these characters are not real. It's just absolute magic. You know, I started watching it for someone that I love, but now I love it for me.